Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of the BizBlend podcast where business meets bold ideas. I'm your host, Sana, as always, and today, in this episode, we are cutting through the clutter of corporate communication and diving into a tool that we all use, have been using, but we often misuse as well: PowerPoint. Yeah. And our guest is a PowerPoint presentation expert who spent over 2 decades in corporate training before doing the unthinkable, starting her own design business. And now she's on a mission to banish boring slides for good. With a word dieting approach, we'll go ahead onto that in our conversation, listeners. But yes, with word dieting approach and a passion for visuals that drive action, she helps clients to transform confusing content into stories that land, inspire, and deliver real results. So, whether you are pitching to investors, teaching a team, or selling a vision, this episode will definitely change the way you think about presentation design. So, with that, Oreet, welcome to the show, and I'm really, really happy to have you here with us.
Hi, Sana. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, Oreet, of course, word dieting. What does that mean in the context of presentation design, and why it is more than just, cutting down the bullet points or reducing the number of words?
Yes, I think in so much of today's communication, there's so much information on the slides. I think we've all been to those presentations where the slides just have charts and graphs and they're overwhelming and lots of bullets. And you just want to scream and yell and say, just tell me what you want to say.
Agree.
Just get
Okay.
to the point. Right? So there's many ways you can get to the point and there's many ways you can divide up those ideas on multiple slides. But when it comes to your core content, it's about what do you want your audience to walk away with? So if we think about that your audience only has 3 to 5 seconds to read a slide, think about what are those key messages. So word dieting is a way to cut out that clutter, look at redundancies, look at repeated words, look at repeated concepts and ideas and say, I only really need to say, you keep cutting back until it doesn't make sense anymore, basically. So, a lot of times we'll say the same thing in different ways, and that's a redundancy. And really it's about valuing your audience's time and their brain space. Again, thinking about those 3 to 5 seconds. What do you want your audience to think about and take away with? And the way to do that is to look at your content and say, how can I cut without losing the core message? And then it's about pairing it with the right visuals to make sure that message lands.
That's so right, because I have seen, I have, I'll be very honest, created as well some slides, crammed with text, bar graphs, and, kind of we have that idea that, when we are creating a slide, the more information we put up there, the more detailed we make it there, the more efficient the message will be out there through our presentation. But, with the current scenario and everything, I think it's really, really important to understand that what exactly is the message that we're going to deliver to the audience or the viewer who's going to look at your slide, keeping in mind with the attention span as well, because love it or hate it, that is real. Attention span is really,
Yeah.
really, really important.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, whether it's an investor deck, especially with an investor deck, the person you're asking money from wants to know, get to the message. What do you do? What problem do you solve? And why should I invest in you? If it's a company overview, what do you do? What problem do you solve? And why would I want to work with you? Whether it's a sales call, what actions you want to drive, and all of that feeds into knowing what the end result is and then working backwards from there. So within those 3 to 5 seconds, that's valuable time. Don't make your audience do any math if you're converting fractions. Don't make your audience have to think any more than what you see on the slide. Don't make them try to look around the slide to see where your message should be. It should be clear, it should be crisp, and it should be compelling right when they see it.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So, Orit, instead of asking you that, what is your process? for turning a complex or maybe even a dry topic into something visually engaging and easy as well. Um, I would love to hear from you maybe a case study or a real world example where your work directly impacted sales decisions or the reputation through a great presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. I recently did a pitch deck for a tech startup, a health tech startup. And what I got was a presentation that probably we've all seen and we've all done, but it looked like it was from the 90s, late 90s. It had a gray background, it had small font. I wasn't able to tell, as someone just getting the deck, what the business model was. And once I understand what the business is and the story that the company wants to tell, then I start to look at what pieces of that story break down. What is the problem? What is the solution? What does the market look like? What does the financing look like? And deciding on finalizing your content is the first thing. Design comes next. You need to have your story told well first. So once you have your story down, again, with minimal information, one or two ideas per slide, then I start to look at the branding and the message and the branding and the coloring and all that, and really put together a comprehensive slide presentation. This particular company was dealing with DNA, so I really tried to make my design reflect kind of that chain link um, imagery. And in the end, with simplified messaging and the right visuals and the right communication, then that pitch deck landed over $1.3 million in funding. So that deck was really able to communicate clearly what the business model is, what the mission is, and what investors can look to get out of investing with that company. So as soon as you simplify your information, results will come. Whether it's a sales call, I had a sales call recently also with a large company that was, this is the direction the company's going in. This is how much sales we need to make. Now, certainly my one presentation isn't going to drive sales the next week, but it was the ability to clearly communicate to the sales team, this is the direction we want you to go in. Here are your goals. This is why your goals are important. And here's what's in it for you when you're done. So being able to be a part of something that drives those sales, that inspires that action, that's the key to designing a great presentation.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And Orit, I mean, I think many of our listeners will have this in their mind, and this is this is similar to what situation I have been. So we right now we have tools and we have resources which say that create your presentation in just minutes, and templates and everything is there. Creatives are there. So many listeners will think, why would I need, someone's help in creating when I can have all those tools and resources do the job for me? But I'll be very clear, Orit, that even if you have all those tools and resources at your disposal, when you sit down to make a presentation, especially a pitch deck, or let's say, a presentation about a service of your company, or anything like an annual presentation, um, you still have to think about how to put out the best content to make sure that the message is really, really clear through those slides. Whether you have all the resources and templates at your disposal, you still need to, have that idea about how to do this, because sometimes you can really have that blank, uh, you know, uh, the blankness within you, or kind of that blocker, that creative blocker within you. So, what would you say about this? I mean, do with AI tools now creating presentation, I mean, having someone to design it, is it becoming obsolete or maybe harder to justify, or do we still need this?
So I'll say a couple of things. So when you mentioned that we all have the same tools available at our resources. So I think I compare that to, you want to build a shed in your backyard, and you can go to the store and buy all the same tools that a contractor would or a builder would buy. And you would say, well, I have all the same tools, but it would take you hours and hours and hours to know how to build this shed from scratch. And that's the benefit of hiring a professional, right? So I'm essentially using most of the same tools that everybody else is using in PowerPoint. And yes, I have access to different icons and different photos, and it's hiring that professional to be able to bring that vision to life. So there are people who do spend lots and lots of time making their own presentations, and then they realize it's just not where I want it to be, and that's why you hire a professional. In terms of AI, I think there's a lot of discussion now in the industry about how AI, the effect of AI on design services, as well as many other services. And I think AI, I think those websites out there, they're a good start for somebody who's looking to create a small local project, maybe internally. But you have to think about is AI, there's also the aspect of human critical thinking that is required when you create a presentation. So it's understanding the audience, understanding how audiences react to different content and different imagery. And that critical thinking of decision making also that AI just doesn't do. And certainly if your presentation is 100 slides, that's a lot of time you're investing to update, correct, fine tune, refine, and at that point, a lot of people just say, I'll hire a professional. So I think for smaller local projects, it might be a good start. But once you start getting into complexities and charts and datas and interpreting that data and how you want that data portrayed, that's where I think you need to bring in that human element for that decision making type of activity.
Definitely, definitely. That absolutely makes sense, Suraj. Absolutely. Wow. Okay. And since we're also talking, we are in the post-COVID era right now. So, in a remote or hybrid business world, where there are more chances of having attention spans, shorter attention spans than ever, how can good presentation design reclaim attention and hold it?
Yeah, I think it has to do with a mix of the right images and the right type of content. And so, I think pre-COVID, to your point, you might have been able to get away with more words on a slide because people are going to sit and read them. But now I think it's even less. I think it's your font size, your font choice, your image, your imagery that you're choosing, how you tell that story and make it compelling, all of that to hold someone's attention. And really, that's, like I said, a universal rule, pre-COVID or not. But I think it's, to your point, more so important after COVID, especially in online presentations where people are on their phones, they're multitasking. It's creating the right imagery and the right words to send that right message to hold their attention.
That's so true. That's so true.
And based on the kind of presentation that you're doing, there's always interactivity and there's questions and there's participation, certainly different than getting up on a stage and speaking, if that's the different type of activity.
That's true. And I would also love to explore your journey, Orit. I mean, you have spent 20 plus years in corporate training and development. I mean, you have helped companies transform complex ideas into, kind of the storytelling, visual narratives. What kind of changes have you seen? 2 decades, and it's not not a joke. It's a big deal. So, what kind of trends or changes have you seen, and what kind of future do you see in this particular aspect of a business or startup?
Yeah. So in training and development, one way or another, I've always dealt in PowerPoint, whether it was creating training curriculums, mostly for the sales audience or for client facing work. And I think as we've been saying, it used to just be a lot of information. It used to just be throw in the kitchen sink. And as technology evolves and as things can look better and polished, and as with social media and the technology and the internet and everybody's attention just getting smaller and smaller, training is getting shorter, training is getting more focused, training is getting cleaner, and it's about not just throwing information out, but understanding what as I mentioned earlier, what behaviors you're trying to change, what are you trying to educate, and really driving to those end outcomes. So I think there's been a greater focus on those outcomes and driving towards that than there was 20 years ago. I think when I started, it was just about throwing stuff on a slide, throwing stuff on a page, and get them out there and throw a quiz at the end. And when I recently left a sales organization, it was all about, what's the shortest, best way to get the information to the sellers. I used to call it parking lot training. That if the seller at the very minimum has never looked at your information, your slide or your PDF, if they only look at it the parking lot of the customer, what is the least amount of information they need to have those effective conversations with customers? So it's much more being in tune with how audience or sellers, how they think, how they operate, and taking into account everything else that your audience has to think about. Training isn't mostly your audience's main job. That's your main job is what I was in my role, but you have to think about of all the information that they're taking in on a daily basis, no matter who the audience is, how do you get your message quicker and faster? And I think there's just been so much more attention to that type of thinking now than there has been about 20 years ago.
Hmm. Wow. That is really, really such an important insight. And I would also like to bring in a bit of you know take this on a flip side. Um, Is it obsessing? Sometimes we kind of become obsessed with the design there. How visually it's looking attractive, whether this color is matching with the template of the presentation or not. So isn't obsessing over design just kind of window dressing when what matters most is the actual content or the idea that is being
Yeah.
pitched?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think there's a balance. You certainly don't want just text on a slide. You want some sort of graphic or icons, but then you also don't want to play show and tell. To your point, you don't. It's not a show and tell of all the animations that you can do, of all the different shadows that you can do, and that's the skill and the experience that a professional designer brings to your project. I believe even more than AI, to say, here's the right balance of the kind of image. Here's the right. Again, it's not a time for showing off all the different features that PowerPoint has to do. So it's minimal effect, but it's the right effect. It's understanding what's the right effect to tell that story on that page.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, that really reminds me of the first time when I started using PowerPoint. I was like, okay, let me give all the animations. Let me give
Right.
all these effects.
Right. There's really just a few animations that are really most effective, and if you choose to do transitions also, there's really just a few that are effective. Um, Again, 3 to 5 seconds. Don't waste your audience's brain space on following animations. The message is important. Animations help support your message, but they are not the message themselves.
Wow, that's really bold and really, really right, Oreet. Great, wonderful. So before we wrap up, um, from your corporate experience to entrepreneurship, Oreet, this is a bit of a personal question, but I think that exactly what many of our listeners will also try to take away. What mindset shifts helped you build a business around something you once said you would never do?
Yeah, I think my stage of life when I said never was I had little kids and I was paying a lot of tuition and we had bills and it's just building a family. And now I'm much older and our situation is different, more stable. And I'm confident enough in my skill set and my ability to go out there and change people's perceptions of PowerPoint, change their perceptions of great communications. And it's just believing that you can do it, believing in yourself. And, my manager one time said to me, "You should love what you do." And I thought, well, that's a luxury to love what you do. At the time, I didn't love what I did. I needed a job to pay the bills. And I'm finally at an age and a stage of experience where I can say, wow, I really love what I do. Somebody one time asked me, what do you do when you're not making PowerPoints? And I said, I'm thinking about PowerPoints. I'm always thinking about it. If I design something in a draft and I'll go to bed and I'll think about I should move this there and do that here and may change this and I'll wake up and I'll do it. And that's how I fall asleep sometimes is it used to be decorating my house in my head and now it's decorating the PowerPoints. It's just seeing what I would do and what I would change. So to me, that's an obsession, and it's something I really love to do. It allows me time with my family, it allows me time for myself, and it's just been a great experience. It's just been a great experience, and I don't regret any 1 minute of it.
Yeah, I so much vibe with that, feeling. I mean, it's like looking at both the sides of the coin. A phase where what you do, I mean, you should love what you do is kind of not the luxury I have, because I have some non-negotiables, not non-negotiables, but more of, responsibilities. But then now you are at the stage of your life where you are like obsessed, you are like
Obsessed.
up in there.
Yeah, I'm obsessed. So somebody one time asked me, why did I choose this angle of design versus being a consultant for training and development for other companies? And I said, simply, I don't want to work as hard. I want to just make the PowerPoints all day long. I love waking up thinking what project's going to cross my plate today, what kind of design, what kind of colors, what is the message we want to get out? Is it what kind of photography are we going to use? And every project is different, which is why I love it. And I think what the experience that I bring is not only one thing, but it's I've seen all the problems. We've all seen the problems and throughout the years, and I'm able to take your vision of what you want to do in this presentation and fix the problems we've seen in the past and bring that vision to life. So I've seen the problems, you've all seen them. I can fix them and I can bring your vision to completion so you get to those desired outcomes.
Beautiful, beautiful, Orit. That is super, super impressive. And if our listeners would like to connect with you, what will be the best way to do that?
So they can go to my site, ocdesigns.info, or they can email me at oreet at ocdesigns.info. I love to have a chat, understand your project, and see how we can work together to make your message stick.
That's really great. So I'll make sure to have all the links mentioned in the show notes. And Orit, this was such a heartfelt conversation. Really, really refreshing. And we not only understood that storytelling is verbal, but it's also visual. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thanks so much, Sana.
So, if you are listeners tired of sleep inducing slides and you want your message to actually move people, don't just talk, design it with purpose. Connect with a read and leverage the resources. I'll have all the links and details in the show notes. And thanks for tuning into BizBlend. See you in the next episode.